Welcome back to another episode of Crypto Maniac, where we decode the crypto space the very best we can. Today I thought that we would embark on a little bit of an experiment where we try to put together, maybe slowly over time, little pieces of a bit of a starter kit. So if you're new to cryptocurrencies, as many of you are, then it might be good to sort of figure out where to start and what to do to make sure that you're on the right path. So as we take a look at the market cap, we're back up to $150 billion. Now that sounds like a lot, but the stock market equivalent is around the trillions of dollars. I don't know exactly what the number is. That said, it's amazing to see the growth that we've had. So just taking a look at the screen here on CoinMarketCap, as I got into this space, I don't know, it might have been around $6-7 billion at its peak. Got up to around the $177 billion range, so it slipped a little bit, so we're having a bit of a healthy pullback right now. But all things considered, nothing to sneeze at. Like, this is absolutely amazing. So one of the first things that I did was I asked a friend, okay? So there are a lot of people who are out there to help. People are generally, I think, very open to try to also promote cryptocurrencies because really a bit of community is good for all of us. So I think that's number one. Second of all, don't just take their word for it. Don't. In terms of even listening to me or anyone else out there, don't ever just listen to one person. Think of all of these little parts as an aggregate to a whole, okay? So once you verify pieces of information or see common threads, that is where you'll know that you're probably on the right track. So one of the first things that I would recommend is get some advice on some exchanges, okay, that you can trade on, where you can easily get your money into, that are easily funded, that are easy to use, that are easy to kind of understand, okay? One of the big things with the exchanges is to make sure that it's, number one, of course, reputable. So if it's got some history behind it, that's probably a good start, right? So we don't want to have some fly-by-night exchange opening up, they collect a whole pile of money, and then they just off in the middle of the night with it all. So that is not good. So do a little bit of research, check out the name of the exchange, and then check out like reviews. So for example, Coinbase review, all right? One of the things that I would definitely recommend is make sure that it's got decent volume. We already talked about the reputation, that there's ease of use so that you understand how the whole platform works, and you should be in good shape. Important exchanges include something like Coinbase, which is actively trying to be the #1 cryptocurrency exchange, and the idea is behind them that they want to make sure that their grandmother can use the site. If that's possible, then should be relatively easy to use, and Coinbase is definitely a good start. I'll leave a referral link as well if you want to get started there in the description below. But other exchanges include Kraken, there's Poloniex, there's Bitfinex, there's Bittrex, and the list goes on. There are literally hundreds if we actually scroll back. So for example, if you want to trade Bitcoin, if you want to go over to CoinMarketCap, click on one of the graphs, and here you'll see a very rough chart. We can talk about charts perhaps another time. This is not the best chart, but it definitely gives us a rough idea. Click here on markets, and here you can see by trading volume, what's trading the most. So in this case today, because this sometimes changes, Bitcoin to USD on Bitfinex is definitely a big and very reputable exchange, okay? But you can go through, and if you're within the top 20 here or so, like Kraken is way down number 8, which is definitely a very good exchange. Something like GDAX, important to know, that's also Coinbase, so it's the same company. Poloniex as well, and Gemini, for example. But again, good idea to explore the sites a little bit, check out some reviews online, and see maybe what speaks to you and any other personal references that you might have. The other thing that I would definitely recommend that's really helpful is if you live in a big city, meetup.com, sometimes there are meetup events that happen in your city. Certainly in my city, it's really interesting for a couple of reasons to go. One of them is to sort of gauge general public reception of cryptocurrencies and to sort of just test and see where we are in that whole space, because I went to an Ethereum meetup recently, and it was a really interesting thing for me to see because I've been in the space for a while. There were a couple of other crypto nerds that showed up there, of course, and they were very well versed in the crypto space. And although I was expecting some newer people to show up, I didn't really realize how many people were really curious just to find something out and did not even have an account, really didn't know all that much, but just wanted to come and get informed. So that's really interesting then to get some insights into these people's minds, to sort of see that they've gotten to a point where they've heard something about it. They're beyond the point where Bitcoin is just for terrorists and for funding trafficking of like children and stuff like that. And they're ready to actually learn a little bit more, which is a great place to be. And I think that is the conversion of people that we want to see get into the space so that we all grow together. That said, I also recently went to a Monero meetup where I feel like anyone holding Monero is probably a little bit more committed in the space. So predictably, at that particular meetup, a lot of people were definitely a little more in the know, and it was a great experience for me as well to exchange information, right? Because no one person can possibly know everything. There are hundreds, there are well over 1,000 at least in the crypto space, and there are new ICOs all the time, so there are new players entering that space, and it's just impossible to have that complete overview. Absolutely nobody can do it. So definitely a good tip, I think, is to explore what are the meetups in your area where you can educate yourself a little bit better, and again, in developing that piece of community. For me, one of the things that was really important, I got into crypto at a time where there was a lot of discussion surrounding Bitcoin and Ethereum and the way they were about to face off, and that there was only going to be one of them. And of course, I came into the space knowing really not a lot. So I sat back and watched Bitcoin for a while and read a lot about it before I decided to stick any money into, which is sound investing overall, of course. But at the time, I didn't quite catch Ethereum at the ICO, but I did get in relatively inexpensively, which now is great. But it's all relative, of course, right? At the time, Ethereum had gone up a lot percentage-wise, and it seemed very expensive. With the perspective of now checking in that Ethereum is just over 300 US, 323 right now, which is up now from 290 something because we've been recently kind of a little in the red. The perspective of that is a totally different thing. So I mean, I wish that I could go back and just load up on that, but of course we can never know that back then, right? And it was a little bit trepidatious, of course, which we all should be. So I made it through the time then when Ethereum went through the chain split and became Ethereum Classic, which was rivaling just plain old regular Ethereum, which we've come to know and love. And I was terrified, of course, because I thought that that meant that, oh my God, I've made a terrible investment and it's going into the ground. But I basically did nothing and I thought, I'm just gonna wait and see. So effectively it had lost around, not quite half its value, maybe a third of its value or something like that going forward. And as it turned out, it just absolutely skyrocketed later on. So we talked a little bit in a previous video about hodling, so hold on for dear life. And with a good technology that has some sound backing, that has a lot of work being done on it right now, that is an absolutely great strategy and it's absolutely paid off, and I'm so glad that I found cryptos, and you should be too. So what that's allowed me to do in the meantime is diversify a bit. So we definitely have a lot of options now, and we don't want to go throwing money into some of the other projects out there because most of them are a promise. There are a few that have a working model and a really great idea, and they may have even been on the other side of execution by this point, right? Some of them are getting very close and there's a lot of hype, so dispelling that balance can be a little bit tricky. So again, the piece of advice is to just aggregate your content with other content that you trust. And on that topic, I would also recommend definitely not spreading yourself too thin. There is a ton of FOMO out there, right? So this is the fear of missing out, and there's so much money that people are making out there. But one of the big things about investing that I'm sure you found, everybody finds this, is that everyone always wants to tell us the huge gains that they've made, and they don't want to tell us about the losses. Even Warren Buffett surely has not gotten to a place where he is not making those kinds of mistakes, because there's some things that you just can't predict. All right, and cryptocurrency, of course, it has these wild mood swings, and so there is just no way to avoid that, except that you're going to lose maybe 50% in a day, possibly. It's absolutely possible. But again, applying the right piece of advice to the right moment is also very key. So if that happens to something that you still think is moving forward, fine. If you make the decision then to hodl, that's great. But always be very cognizant of why you're doing that. And speaking of FOMO, there are a lot of people, of course, that do buy into the hype. So as you look at the graph and everything is screaming upward, then of course, a lot of people then would have bought very high just to see it go over that peak and head all the way back down again. So if you are one of those people that did get caught into the FOMO, again, decide, is this something that really has a lot of longevity? Why did it fall off on the other side? And is there a good possibility that it's shown those kinds of characteristics before, meaning that we know that it's going to come back again? Like, again, big players, Bitcoin and Ethereum. So if that's the case, imagine, right? So recently, Ethereum went up to and just gently touched $400 again, just to come crashing below 300 again. So that's a bit of a drag, but understand that if you bought in the high 300s, let's even say $400 even, once we get to something, if you really believe in the technology behind Ethereum and the team and the development and the direction it's going, and now the Metropolis is coming out and all of these different things, Ethereum Island is even coming, that it just won't matter if Ethereum on the other side of that line that we can't see, if that reaches something like 800, 1,000, maybe blue sky, it's going to be 5,000 one day, we don't know and nobody can predict that, then it just won't really matter that you paid $400 a coin for that. So make logical, sound decisions based on what you think is going to happen in the future and the credibility of some of these coins out there. Now, if you bought on the high end of some crap coin and it is on the way down, that is a completely different story, but definitely depends on the team behind the coin and what their vision is and the longevity of the project itself. So one example that I'd sort of like to draw your attention to, again, in the spirit of only talking about wins and never talking about losses, that is definitely part of it. I have definitely suffered some losses. In the crypto space, I am definitely in great shape, but yes, I have absolutely made some mistakes over my time, for sure. But one of the things that I would like to say about hodling and this whole idea is to definitely be very careful. So in the mid-2000s, for example, great Canadian company Research in Motion, known for their BlackBerry telephones, they were the absolute darling of the market. And if you look at the trend here, through the early part of the 2000s, their stock price was not worth that much, a couple bucks. These are American prices, and then it climbed exponentially to a high of $227.52. And I mean, at that point, it just seemed like it could only ever go up, but that is always a mistake. So I thought that it would go up. I didn't buy quite that high. I must have bought in this region here somewhere, I think, but I absolutely thought that it would go up. It just kept going down and kept going down and kept going down. And since it looks like around 2012 or so, it's had a really hard time getting above $10. And so today, even years and years later, it's only at $9.02. So I got caught under that, and that was a learning mistake for me. That said, not to create FUD here on this channel, because the crypto space, I mean, is just full of so many ups and downs. And again, I'm actually happy to take the hit on something like BlackBerry because the promise of something in the future was good enough, and you're going to win some and you're going to lose some, but hopefully the overall trend is upward, and that is fine. So in the Bitcoin case, for example, a lot of people have talked about this, but I think it bears repeating because there was this wild run up here. So in this region, we're even already at $10, and this is coming up on 2013. We have this wild run up here that goes way up to a couple $100, pulls back, of course. And if you're only looking at this chart, this is where this FOMO starts to kick in, right? So there's just this wall going upward. But as we get on the other side of that line, you see that it starts to go down, kind of comes back up, keeps going down, keeps going down, keeps going down. Now imagine you bought around this area somewhere on all of the hype into all the FOMO. then you're in for $900, let's say, right? Which for the next couple of years, it just never reached those heights again, right? So eventually you're sitting on, again, a $200 Bitcoin. So that is obviously alarming. But as it turns out, now that we can see the other side of that line and know how it turned out, today we're sitting at like a $4,500 Bitcoin, and it's already reached $5,000. So there are all kinds of predictions out there for it to go to the moon. Those are often very self-serving. And what is the moon? We hear all these predictions about $500,000 Bitcoin, $1 million Bitcoin, who knows? But the technology seems very sound. I'm super excited about what it has to offer. There is a huge value proposition there. There are real world cases in the meantime. And so I'm excited and happy to just leave my money there and accept the peaks and the valleys. So, on that note, what are some of the pieces of advice that you would like to give? Where have you lost out? And what are the major lessons that you've come to learn over time? So leave a comment below so I can learn a little bit about you as well. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.